The billionaire Sheikh's emerald eyes flashed with fierce authority as he stood silently in the grand hall, watching the chaos ripple through his opulent palace. No nanny had lasted a week caring for his beloved twins, not for lack of trying, but because the demands of these spirited children were as relentless as the desert sun outside. He prided himself on control over his vast empire, his people, even his own heart. But here, in these gilded walls, scented thickly with oud and jasmine, control was slipping through his fingers. The palace was a realm of shimmering golds and sumptuous silks, vast chandeliers dripping with crystal light, casting long shadows on marble floors. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, silence broken only by the whisper of hot winds playing with the curtains. Yet inside, disorder simmered. Beneath polished surfaces and lavish banquets, toys strewn like treasure across the marble, faint cries of frustration echoing down the vast corridors. He was a man used to wielding power effortlessly, decisive, commanding, ruthless when necessary. But today a weariness shadowed his face. Heavy lines betrayed long nights wrestling with a problem no money could buy peace from. The children, the proud heirs to his legacy, were slipping through the cracks of his iron will. Into this tempest stepped a woman unlike any before. Confident yet calm, she moved with a quiet strength that seemed to ripple through the thick air. Her eyes held no fear, only a spark of defiance as she met his gaze. The Sheikh's first impression, skepticism, hardened by experience, was quick and cold. Yet something about her unshakable poise dared him to hope. The twins were a tempest themselves, resistant and cunning, their laughter slicing the thick tension like sharp daggers. Each challenge they flung her way was met with steady resolve. At first, the Sheikh watched from the shadows, his posture rigid, his jaw clenched, as if daring this woman to fail like all before. But in the quiet moments, when the twins' laughter softened, and her gentle hands soothed their wild spirits, a fragile truce began to form. Their interactions crackled with unspoken tension, a dance of authority and vulnerability, silence speaking volumes. He saw not just the defiance in her eyes, but a hidden tenderness, a strength born of battles he could not yet comprehend. For the first time in months, the heavy weight on his chest slightly lifted, replaced by a cautious curiosity and an ember of something dangerously close to hope. Then, as dusk cloaked the desert, the unexpected happened. A small porcelain locket slipped from the woman's belongings during a hurried moment, its delicate chain catching the light like a secret. The Sheikh caught sight of it, a family crest engraved faintly on the silver, instantly recognizable, but impossibly out of place. His heart skipped in a way no luxury or power had ever commanded, and suspicion tightened like a noose around what fragile trust had begun to form. What secret lay hidden beneath that precious trinket? And how would its revelation shatter the fragile sanctuary she had built within these walls? Before the next secret of this grand palace is unveiled, make sure you're part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies still await to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. If the heart of this billionaire sheikh has already hooked you, leave your like. Tell us in the comments, where are you following this saga from? And what twist do you think is coming next? Your passion for these dramas inspires us to keep going. Thank you for being with us. The delicate locket slipped from her grasp like a silent whisper, its silver chain catching the fading light, casting fleeting glimmers across the polished marble floor. The sheikh's emerald eyes locked onto it with a lightning strike of recognition that shattered the fragile calm he had felt moments before. The family crest, engraved faintly on the locket's surface, was unmistakable, a symbol of a clan he had spent years both revering and warily avoiding, buried deep in the sands of his past. For a heartbeat, the grand hall around them, the shimmering golds, the crystal chandeliers, the sweeping tapestries, faded into insignificance. His mind raced through memories best left untouched, secrets best kept buried beneath layers of duty and power. Yet there it lay, gleaming cold and clear in the light, the undeniable proof that this woman, this calm and unyielding presence in the storm of his life, carried a fragment of his own forbidden history. He stepped forward, the courtier's murmurs fading under the thunderous beat of his pulse. His voice, usually cold and unwavering, now trembled with a mixture of suspicion and something raw, something dangerously close to vulnerability. "What is this?" he demanded, his gaze never leaving the locket. "Where did you get this?" Her breath caught, a flicker of something unreadable flashing in her eyes. For a moment, pride clashed with fear, and the poised mask she wore wavered on the edge of breaking. Finally, in a voice low and steady, she spoke. "It belonged to my mother. I carry it because it's all I have left." The half-truth hung between them like the thick scent of oud, heavy and suffocating. The sheikh's mind sifted through 1,000 questions. Why had she hidden this? Why had none of his trusted advisors spoken of this connection? And most unsettling of all, how deep did this secret thread intertwine with the tapestry of his own life? The twins, momentarily distracted by their unexpected silence, peeked curiously from behind the heavy silk curtains. Their wild laughter had become a bittersweet melody to the sheikh, part chaos, part cherished treasure. But now, even their innocent faces seemed to conceal questions too complex for their age. He turned his gaze back to her, the flicker of steel in his eyes replaced by a tempest of emotions he rarely allowed himself to acknowledge. Control, the cornerstone of his empire and identity, slipped further away. With every passing moment, she remained unbroken before him. In that instant, he realized that this woman was not just an obstacle to be overcome, but a key to a part of himself he had long tried to forget. The silence stretched, heavy and charged, as if the very walls of the palace held their breath. Then, slowly, a fragile truce began to form, of words, but of glances, an unspoken understanding. She was no longer just the defiant caretaker of his children. She was a keeper of truths that reached into the very heart of the man he both feared and admired. Later, when the desert night cloaked the palace in shadows, and the cool breeze whispered through the open terraces, the sheikh found himself alone with the locket in his hands, It was heavier than it looked, not in weight, but in meaning. His fingers traced the delicate engravings as memories flickered like distant stars. Names whispered in the past, lost promises, battles fought in silence. His mouth tightened. What was he to do with this revelation? Trust was a currency more precious than gold in his world, and she had just bet everything without so much as a glance backward. Meanwhile, across the palace, the woman sat in the quiet solitude of a small chamber, far from the glittering grandeur. Her heart pounded in her chest with a rhythm both defiant and desperate. The secret she carried was a shadow that threatened to unravel everything she had fought for, everything she had dared to hope. She looked toward the door, where outside the distant footsteps of the Sheikh still echoed faintly. Their worlds, so different in every conceivable way, now hovered precariously on the edge of collision. One wrong move, one misplaced word, and the fragile threads of alliance and affection would snap into ruin. She clutched the locket tightly, as if to draw strength from the memory contained within. A lifetime of silence had been more than enough, but now her past demanded to be heard. Back in the grand hall, the Sheikh paced beneath the towering columns, the weight of his forebears pressing on him like the desert sun. The gilded cage he had built for himself was learning to creak under the strain of truths he had buried, and beneath his ruthless exterior, a storm was gathering. To his right, a servant timidly placed a tea tray, its delicate porcelain clinking softly. The Sheikh barely noticed, his mind ensnared in the web of questions her presence had spun. How could a stranger, a woman who had seemed so merely a caretaker, hold a mirror to his soul and ignite a fire he thought long dead? His voice broke the silence as he muttered to himself, "What are you hiding, and why?" Now, a sound interrupted him, a faint, hurried knock at the palace gate. His heart tightened and released simultaneously, warning and intrigue mingling in equal measure. He stopped, every muscle taut, every sense sharpened. The late hour rarely brought visitors, and a knock at this time could only mean one thing. A new player had entered the game. His emerald eyes narrowed, gleaming fiercely. The secrets held by the locket were no longer his only concern. And as the heavy doors slowly creaked open, a shadow moved through the threshold, carrying a message that could ignite a war within the palace walls, or perhaps save the fragile hope nestled in the heart of the billionaire Sheikh. The heavy doors groaned as they slowly yielded to the night's visitor. The Sheikh's emerald eyes sharpened, piercing the dim light that spilled into the grand hall. Every sense was alert, every muscle taut beneath his finely tailored robe. The unexpected knock had stirred a tempest, one he could no longer contain within the gilded walls. The figure stepping past the threshold was draped in shadows, but the commanding presence was unmistakable. The distant memory of whispered warnings and half-forgotten threats, whispered in the corridors of power, clamored in the Sheikh's mind. This was no ordinary visitor. The twins, momentarily distracted by the knock, whimpered softly from their hidden refuge, their small faces framed by the heavy silk curtains. The cacophony of their earlier laughter faded into tense silence, as if the air itself had grown thick with anticipation. The woman, the caretaker who bore the locket, etched with a past the sheikh both feared and needed, watched silently, her heart pounding fiercely despite the calm she insisted upon exuding. Her eyes never wavered from the emerald-eyed man whose entire world seemed to tilt with each breath. The newcomer stepped forward, and the faint scent of sandalwood mingled with the palace's familiar oud and jasmine. "Sheikh Karim." The voice was low, yet it cut through the stillness like a scimitar. "We must speak, now." Karim's jaw clenched, a harsh line cutting across his handsome face. "In my home, at this hour, you risk much." His voice, though steady, betrayed the undercurrent of unease threading beneath his royal facade. A shadow flickered across the visitor's eyes, respect tinged with urgency. "There is news. Secrets long buried have surfaced. If you wish to protect all you hold dear, including the woman you've entrusted so much, then you must listen." The caretaker stepped apart, giving space for the confrontation unfolding before her. She tightened her grip on the precious locket, its cold weight grounding her in the chaos stirring around her. Her thoughts raced, her carefully built world trembling on the edge of collapse or salvation. Karim's eyes never left the visitor, every flicker of emotion flickering across his face, hidden in a storm of control and defiance. "Speak." The visitor's voice dropped, revealing a truth wrapped in shadows. "The family crest you recognized on her locket, it's not the only secret she carries. There are alliances forged in blood and betrayal, dangers that could unravel everything you have built. And there is a curse, perhaps more than a legend, that dogs your bloodline. The woman you keep close. She holds the key." Karim's breath caught, a sudden sharpness slicing through the heavy air. "Explain." The stranger's gaze flicked briefly to the caretaker before returning to the sheikh. "You do not know what you've invited into your home, or what she is willing to risk to protect you both. And neither do you fully understand the price that past will demand." The woman's heart clenched as the weight of the revelation pressed down upon her. She had battled to be seen as more than a servant, more than a shadow in the grand tapestry of the palace. Now, the threads of her hidden past threatened to unravel everything. The sheikh's eyes darkened, a tempest swirling beneath the surface. If she is part of that past, then why has she never spoken? Why conceal what could protect or destroy us? A flicker of pain and defiance folded into her gaze. Because some truths are cages, not shields. Because the moment I reveal all is the moment I lose what little trust I have earned. The twins, sensing the tension yet again, stepped into the hall. A daring move from their usual hiding places. Their wide eyes reflected innocence, but beneath that sparkled a fierce spirit reminiscent of their father's own fire. Karim's face softened, a rare break in the armor. "Leave them be," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. "They are the future, and I intend to protect them fiercely." The caretaker nodded, the burden in her chest easing slightly at his sudden softening. Yet the doubt lingered, twisting and turning like desert wind through the palace corridors. The visitor turned to leave, but before disappearing into the shadows, dropped a final warning. Trust is a fragile thing, Sheikh. And sometimes the greatest betrayal comes from those closest to us. As the heavy doors closed again, the grand hall seemed to inhale sharply, the echoes of the encounter reverberating through the marble pillars and gilded corridors. Kareem stood alone, fingers brushing the cold silver of the locket she had left behind earlier that day. The air was thick with unspoken questions and uncharted fears. Could he trust the woman who had tamed the wild tempest of his twins, who had dared to hold a mirror to his soul? Or was she the key to a storm that would bring his empire to ruin? He turned toward the eastern window. The desert moon hung low in the sky, pale and haunting. The wind whispered secrets across the sands, filling the quiet night with promises of change. Suddenly, a faint noise behind him, a soft shift of silk, the nearly imperceptible breath of the caretaker returning. She stepped forward, eyes shining with unyielding resolve and a flicker of vulnerability, and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "There's something else. Something I didn't tell you." Kareem's gaze met hers, the air between them crackling with tension and longing. The fragile truce that had begun now hovered on a knife's edge, threatened by truth and trust, and the unrelenting pull of secrets long buried beneath the desert sands. He waited. Her lips trembled as she began, but then the distant pounding of hooves reached their ears, urgent, relentless, and impossible to ignore. The palace held its breath once more. Outside, the shadows of riders galloped swiftly toward the gates, carrying news that would shatter the delicate balance of power, heart, and history within these walls forever. The heavy rhythm of hooves thundered against the stone-paved courtyard, echoing through the vast, shadowed expanse of the palace beneath a cold, silvered moon. Sheikh Kareem's body tightened as the riders approached, an ominous cavalcade slicing through the stillness like a blade through silk. His heart pounded with urgent foreboding, the crescendo of tension building beyond anything he had felt in weeks. The grand doors groaned under heavy hands, swinging wide to unveil the figures cloaked in dust and desert wind. Their faces were grim, eyes sharp with urgency that silenced even the whispered courtiers gathered in the shadows. The eldest among them stepped forward, an emissary bearing dread news and a look that promised upheaval. Kareem's emerald eyes locked onto the visitor, his stoic exterior barely veiling the tempest raging beneath. The night air carried the mingled scents of sweat and sand. The stark contrast to the intoxicating perfumes of oud and jasmine inside served as a brutal reminder of the fragile veneer of control he maintained here. "My sheikh," the emissary's voice was low but steady, heavy with the weight of the message he bore. "Trouble brews beyond the northern dunes. A rival clan has uncovered truths long buried, secrets tied to your bloodline, and to the woman within these walls. The caretaker, the woman who had tamed his wild twins and stirred his guarded heart, stood silent beside him, her fingers tightening around the locket, hidden beneath her flowing robes. The silver chain glimmered faintly, a fragile talisman against the gathering storm. Kareem's gaze flicked briefly to her, before returning to the emissary. Explain. The clan has sent envoys, laying claim to an ancient grievance. They accuse your lineage of betrayal that fractured alliances and cursed generations. Worse, they seek whatever she carries, something they believe will bind their fate to yours. The emissary's words cut sharp, slicing open wounds Kareem had long hoped to bury beneath layers of power and pride. The grand hall seemed to pulse with the weight of the revelation, the gilded gold and crystal chandeliers suddenly feeling oppressive, their brilliance dimmed by shadows of impending war. The twins, usually so spirited and irrepressible, clung briefly to their caretaker's skirts. Their wide eyes, reflecting the flicker of torchlight, showed a dawning understanding that their world teetered on the edge. Kareem's jaw tightened as his mind wove through fragments of half-remembered stories, whispered in forgotten halls, and ancient scrolls locked away in private chambers. The legacy of his family was a tapestry woven with golden triumphs and dark, whispered betrayals. Now, the past crept in like a desert storm, relentless and unyielding. Turning to the woman, his voice sharpened, fraught with a mixture of fierce protectiveness and raw vulnerability. You have kept this from me. Why? Why hide what could save us? She met his gaze evenly, an unspoken challenge flaring in her eyes. Because the truth is not a shield, Kareem. It is a blade. It cuts both ways. To reveal it is to invite judgment and perhaps destruction. The tension between them tightened taut as a bowstring, a fragile trust suspended on a thread thinner than a spider's web. She was no longer just the caretaker. She was a keeper of secrets that could crumble kingdoms or build new empires. Suddenly, the distant echo of whispered footsteps echoed softly in the far corridor. Kareem's senses sharpened instantly, his stature commanding even amid uncertainty. The palace was alive with hidden eyes and silenced tongues. This was no surprise. Secrets in walls of marble were rarely safe. We cannot delay, the emissary warned, voice low. The rival clan's emissaries will reach the city gates within days, and they bring more than words. They bring war. A hollow ache settled in Kareem's chest. His entire life had been a delicate dance of power and obligation, and now love and legacy were intertwined in a perilous knots, impossible to unravel without pain. The woman beside him, grounded yet radiating a quiet strength, was both his greatest hope and deepest mystery. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of dark hair behind her ear, a fleeting gesture heavy with promise and desperation. Whatever comes, you will stand with me. Her reply was a whisper, fierce as the desert winds whipping beyond the palace walls. Always. As the first horseman's shadows flickered against the golden tapestry, Kareem's mind raced with strategies, alliances, and betrayals yet to unfold. The throne he occupied felt less like a fortress and more like a trap, one that demanded sacrifices beyond wealth or power. His emerald eyes drifted to the locket once more, its delicate weight now a symbol of the war waging not only around him, but inside his fractured heart. The secret it bore was a curse, a promise, and perhaps salvation, all tangled in the same fragile chain. A sudden, chilling breeze swept through the hall, swirling dust and rose petals in a ghostly dance. And from the shadows stepped a figure long thought lost, a ghost from Kareem's past, with eyes like burning embers and a smile that whispered of vengeance. The palace, so often a place of shimmering splendor and whispered grandeur, held its breath. The delicate balance was shattered. He was back, and everything would never be the same again. The cool desert breeze wafted through the open windows, stirring the heavy silks and whispering secrets only the night could hold. Sheikh Kareem stood rigid amidst the vast grand hall, the weight of the silver locket resting cold and unmistakable in his palm. Outside, the stars blinked indifferently, but within the palace, the air burned hot with menace and unspoken truths. His gaze flickered to the woman who had unwittingly become the axis of his tangled fate. Her eyes met his, not with fear but a quiet resolve that unsettled him more than any open defiance. The locket, engraved with the crest of a forgotten clan, was no mere trinket. It was an anchor to a past Kareem had buried beneath layers of empire and power, now resurrected in the delicate chain she carried close to her heart. Behind them, the fading echo of hooves sent ripples through the marble corridors. The emissary's words lingered like poison in Kareem's mind. Enemies awakening, secrets unraveling, and the fragile sanctuary he had built on shifting sands, threatened by shadows old and new. He took a slow breath, savoring the scent of jasmine mingling with oud, the fragrances once comforting, now tainted with the bitter taste of betrayal. His voice cut through the thick silence, low and steady, but charged with urgency. "You knew this would come. Why did you not trust me with the truth?" The caretaker's lips pressed into a firm line. "Because some truths are cages, Kareem, not weapons. To reveal them is to imprison us both." His emerald eyes narrowed, searching for the cracks beneath her composed exterior. There was more. A story she dared not tell. A danger she hid behind calm courage. The twins peeked timidly from behind the heavy curtains, their innocent faces edge-lined with uncertainty. Their laughter, once a defiant storm, had dulled to fragile hope. Kareem's jaw clenched. The palace, so often a fortress, now felt like a glass cage trembling on the edge of shattering. Every secret, every shadow from the past hovered, ready to consume. Suddenly, a faint stir from the corridors caught his attention. He turned sharply, muscles coiled like spring. The heavy doors groaned open, and through the threshold stepped a figure wrapped in twilight. Familiar, yet unfamiliar, a ghost from long ago. The man's eyes burned with the same fierce fire Kareem remembered too well. His presence was a silent challenge, a dark promise of reckoning. Kareem's breath hitched. The wounds of old betrayals gaped wide beneath the surface. This was no mere visitor. This was a reckoning walking into the heart of his empire. "Returning so soon, Ziam?" Kareem's voice was a harsh whisper, laced with a cold professionalism that barely masked the turmoil roiling beneath. Ziam's smile was a blade cloaked in shadow, I come bearing news and warnings. Your enemies move faster than you imagine. The locket you keep, the woman you guard, they are the keys to more than you know. The caretaker stepped forward, eyes blazing with quiet defiance. Enough games, she said, voice firm. This isn't just about old grudges or politics. It's about survival, for all of us. Kareem's emerald gaze flickered between them, torn between loyalty to the past and the fragile hope stirring in his chest. The night bore down, pressing with promises of both destruction and salvation. Speak, he commanded, every inch the ruler forced to temper fury with control. Zaim's eyes gleamed, reflecting torchlight like embers. A rival clan's emissaries march toward the city gates at dawn. They claim the blood debt your house owes, one written in betrayal and sealed with blood. They seek this woman, thinking she holds the power to bind or break your fate. A silence fell heavy as stone. The twins clung closer to their caretaker, sensing the tremors threatening their world. Kareem's heart pounded fiercely against the cage of bones and silk. The legacy he had shaped, the empire he guarded, now threatened by the very woman who had woven herself into his broken heart. Then we prepare, he breathed, fingers curling tightly around the locket. If they come for her, they come for me. Her eyes softened, pain flickering beneath the steady flame of courage. I did not choose this path, Kareem, but I will walk it by your side. Outside, the wind carried whispered secrets through the palm fronds, carrying promises and threats alike across the endless dunes. The palace seemed to hold its breath as the fragile pact between them deepened, a blend of necessity and something dangerously close to love. But before dawn could break the silence, a sharp, hurried knock shattered the tense calm once more. Kareem's gaze snapped toward the door, every muscle tensing with renewed dread. The visitor who stepped inside, or a message, not from enemies, but from deeper shadows within the palace walls. With eyes dark as midnight and voice dripping venom, the figure spoke a name long thought buried. And with it, the final piece of the puzzle slid into place, threatening to undo everything Kareem dared to hold sacred. The oasis of hope he had grasped trembled on the edge of a storm. The caretaker's fingers tightened around the locket, her breath catching at the unspoken dread. Your past has come back, the new arrival whispered, voice cold as desert night, and it's far closer than you ever imagined. The shadows lengthened across the grand hall, the once vibrant golds and shimmering crystals now dimmed under the heavy weight of coming storm. Sheikh Kareem stood rigid, the silver locket cold and unyielding in his palm, as the echoes of the unexpected visitor's words tangled with the relentless pounding of his heart. The delicate chain felt heavier than ever, not from its physical form, but from the grave burden of secrets it carried. The woman beside him, her posture unshaken, yet her eyes shadowed with the toll of silent suffering, met his gaze, a quiet challenge in their depths. Between the flicker of torchlight and the scent of oud swirling through the vast columns, a fragile thread of trust stretched taut between them, strained by years of half-truths. And now, the relentless storm that howled beyond the palace walls. Kareem's emerald eyes softened for a fleeting moment as they drifted to the twins, who clung to her skirts with wide, uncertain eyes. The once wild laughter had faded, leaving an echo of fragile hope that made his chest tighten with both love and fear. These children, his legacy, his future, were caught in the crossfire of ancient vendettas and hidden truths. He swallowed hard, the weight of his crown suddenly feeling more like a cage. "Tell me everything," he demanded, his voice low but charged with a desperation that reverberated through the silent room. No more shadows, no more secrets. Her gaze flickered, emotions crashing briefly across her carefully carved composure. "It is not just my past, Kareem. It is your bloodline that is woven into this web, woven with betrayal, with silence, with power that refuses to stay buried." Her hands clenched the locket, the silver cool against her skin, but her heart burned with the fires of a truth too dangerous to name aloud. Outside, the desert wind whispered against the palace stone, as if urging time forward, urging them toward the inevitable clash that would determine everything. Kareem paced slowly beneath the towering columns, the echo of his footsteps stirring the heavy tapestry of history that draped the palace like a shroud. "The emissaries spoke of a clan," he murmured, "ancient enemies who still hold grudges sharper than swords. If they believe she holds the key, then they will come for us with the fury of a desert storm." Her eyes locked on his, resolute despite the tremor beneath. "I have spent a lifetime hiding, not just from enemies out there, but from the very legacy that binds us. This locket was all I dared carry, all I dared show." Her voice softened, a fragile secret slipping free. "Because to reveal more is to invite destruction." Kareem, hands tightened around the silver talisman, his knuckles whitening. "We will face whatever comes. Together." A sudden clatter from the far corridor snapped their attention as the twins, emboldened by their mother's presence, stepped fully into the hall. Their innocent faces mirrored the flicker of torchlight, brave but frightened, carrying the fierce fire of a future uncertain. Kareem's gaze melted briefly in admiration and protection. "Leave them be," he said with quiet authority. "They are the pulse of this house." A long silence settled, thick and heavy, broken only by the distant murmurs of the palace waking to a new peril. Kareem turned back to the woman, his voice raw with urgency. "There is more you are not telling me. The visitor's warning, it was not mere ceremony. What else lies beneath this fragile peace?" She hesitated, the firmness in her jaw slackening, just enough to betray the storm warring within. Slowly, her voice fell into a whisper. "There is a shadow deeper than any clan, a darkness tied to our blood, a reckoning long overdue. And someone from your past, someone you believed lost, has returned." Kareem's breath caught, apprehension surging through his veins. The man's face, still vivid in his memory, was etched with betrayal and vengeance. "Zaim," he whispered, the name tasting bitter on his tongue. "What game is he playing?" Before she could answer, the hall's heavy doors slammed open once more, the sudden intrusion slicing through the charged air like a scimitar. Courtiers and servants alike froze, eyes wide in alarm, as footsteps echoed down the marble in measured, unyielding rhythm. Emerging from the shadows was a figure drenched in twilight, his presence a dark echo of Kareem's own conflicted past, eyes burning with a fire that promised war. The man's lips curled into a cruel smile, shadowed with the weight of old grievances. "Sheikh Kareem," he said, voice a velvet threat, "the hour of reckoning is upon us. Your fortress made of gold and secrets is about to fall." Kareem's emerald gaze flared with fierce defiance. "Zaim," he said, each syllable a blade drawn from deep within, "I told you once, this palace is mine. Whatever you bring, we will stand." An eerie silence followed. Then the newcomer's laugh rippled coldly through the hall, a sound that seemed to draw the very shadows closer. "And what will you do when the secrets you guard turn against you? When the locket you cherish becomes the seal of your ruin?" The woman stepped forward, her voice steady though her heart threatened to fracture. "You seek to use fear as your weapon, but it is trust and love that will carry us through your lies." Kareem's gaze flicked to her, a flame kindled in the darkness. "You and I," he declared, voice resonant with newfound resolve, "face the storm together. No past, no enemy, no shadow will tear us apart." The twins tugged lightly at her robes, their small hands silent pleas for safety in a world unraveling. Kareem bent, gathering them close, his arms a shield against the encroaching tempest. But outside, beyond the fortress walls, the desert wind howled, carrying with it the promise of war, betrayal, and a truth yet to be unveiled. And deep within the palace, as the heavy doors closed with a thunderous finality, a whispered confession slipped from the caretaker's lips, barely audible above the rising storm. There is someone else coming, someone who knows the secret of the locket and the fate it seals. Kareem's emerald eyes narrowed dangerously, the fire within now ablaze, because the battle for his heart and his empire had only just begun. The palace held its breath in the eerie silence that followed Zaim's return. Sheikh Kareem's emerald eyes burned with a fierce fire, his posture rigid as carved marble beneath the towering golden columns. The air, once sweet with oud and jasmine, now felt thick, as if the walls themselves whispered ancient warnings. Every faint echo, a distant footstep, a soft breath, seemed amplified. In the heavy stillness, he turned slowly, the silver locket cold against his palm, a stark symbol of the fragile trust that had been forged and shattered within these halls. The caretaker stood quietly beside him, her gaze unwavering, though the subtle tremble of her fingers betrayed the storm swirling beneath her calm exterior. The twins, their lively spirits, smothered under the shadow of looming threat, huddled behind her skirts, their wide eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the ornate chandeliers. Kareem's voice was low, but edged with steel as he broke the silence. "You said there was someone else, someone who knows the secret of that locket." His breath hitched as the weight of the revelations settled around them like desert dust. "Who?" Her eyes darkened, shadows pooling in their depths. As if unearthing memories buried beneath years of silence. A man from your past. More than that, he is a reckoning. She hesitated, the air between them charged with unspoken tensions and fears. Before she could say more, a sharp crack echoed down the corridor, footsteps quickening, cutting through the palace's fragile calm. The heavy doors swung open once again, admitting a rush of cool desert air and the silhouette of a figure framed in moonlight. The stranger's presence was magnetic, powerful, the very essence of threat and history entwined. Kareem's body tensed, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to snap. The man stepped forward, and the gleam of recognition flashed in the Sheikh's fierce gaze. Ziam. His smile was a razor's edge, smooth, cold, and deadly. I did not expect such a warm welcome, Ziam said, voice silky yet laced with venom. But you forget, Kareem. Some debts can never be buried beneath gold or lies. The caretaker's jaw clenched, her hands gripping the locket beneath her robes with renewed determination. The twins looked up, sensing the gravity seeping into the air like a poison. Kareem's voice was a low growl, filled with years of restrained fury. You have no place here. Ziam's laugh was dark and mirthless. I have every right. This palace, this throne, they are built on secrets I intend to unravel. His eyes flickered to the caretaker, the locket glinting faintly beneath the fabric. And her, he said, nodding toward her, is more than a mere servant. She holds the key to the past you've tried so desperately to keep locked. Away! The woman's voice cut through the tension, steady and defiant. You seek to destroy what little peace we have, but you underestimate the strength forged through pain and silence. Ziam's gaze sharpened, but the slightest flicker of hesitation betrayed an old wound, a fractured bond tangled deeply in their shared history. Strength is futile. The clan's emissaries ride for war, Kareem. They carry the fire of retribution, and they believe she holds a power that will break your bloodline. Kareem's eyes flicked to the twins, their small faces pale but resolute, their innocence now a fragile shield in the face of impending violence. He felt the walls of his gilded cage press tight, the weight of legacy and love threatening to suffocate. Then we prepare, Kareem said, voice steady, though his heart thundered with a mixture of dread and determination. No matter the cost. The grand hall seemed to close in around them as Ziam stepped closer, his presence menacing yet charged with bitter history. Do you truly believe this fierce loyalty can save you? Or will it be the destruction of all you hold dear? The caretaker stepped forward, her eyes blazing with a fire born of countless battles, both visible and hidden. We will survive because we fight together, because love is a force older and stronger than any curse. A tense silence followed. The moment stretched thin between hope and despair, trust and betrayal. Kareem's gaze locked with hers, a silent promise passing between them, a vow forged in the crucible of shared secrets and intertwined destinies. Suddenly, a distant cry shattered the fragile stillness, a messenger galloping through the desert night, a herald of approaching storm. Footsteps thundered from the palace gates, urgent and relentless as the desert winds. Kareem's expression hardened, the fierce protector emerging over the weary ruler. He moved swiftly, the fabric of his robe a shimmering wave against the marble floors. As servants scurried to open the gates, for the new arrival. The twins clung tightly to the caretaker, their small hands entwined, seeking comfort in the presence of the only woman who had bridged the vast gulf of their fragmented world. The rider dismounted swiftly, eyes flashing beneath the shadow of his hood. With a voice edged in urgency, he brought word that twisted like a blade through Kareem's already taut resolve. The northern clan advances faster than anticipated. The messenger reported, breath ragged from the pace. But there's something else. A secret, long kept hidden within the palace walls, has been betrayed. An accomplice among your own has turned a dagger to your back. Kareem's emerald eyes glinted with furious disbelief. Who dares betray me? The caretaker's breath hitched, a shadow of doubt flickering across her calm veneer. What is hidden in the heart is often the most dangerous. Zaim's grin curled cruelly. Trust is as fragile as glass in this palace, and it is about to shatter. Kareem's fists clenched tightly around the silver chain of the locket. The princesses, his future, the fragile hope of love and redemption, all pressed against the edge of ruin. And as the desert wind howled outside, flinging sand against ancient stone, a whisper drifted through the darkened corridors. The betrayal was closer than anyone dared imagine, closer than even the Sheikh could see. The secret that would break his empire lurked behind the next door. The air in the grand hall chilled as Zaim's shadow stretched long across the polished marble. His presence, a dark storm that unsettled even the most steadfast pillars of the palace. Sheikh Kareem's emerald eyes burned with a fierce determination. The weight of years and secrets packed into every guarded glance he cast toward the man, who was both a ghost from his past and a harbinger of upheaval. The servants and courtiers fell silent, sensing the tightrope tension that threatened to unravel the fragile peace. The scent of oud mingled with the cool desert night air that slipped in through the towering windows. But the familiar comfort it once brought was drowned beneath the surge of mounting danger. You came back too soon, Zaim, Kareem said, his voice low and controlled. But beneath it flickered a tempest. His hands clenched the silver chain of the locket, hidden inside his robe, deliberately. Do you know what your return stirs in this house? Zaim smiled, a slow, cruel curve that held the promise of ruin. I've stirred what was always just beneath the surface. Kareem, the truth you refuse to face, the blood debt that stains your legacy, and the key you clasp so tightly. His eyes flicked knowingly toward the caretaker, whose calm had begun to flicker like a candle fighting desert winds. She stood steady, but her grip on the locket tightened until her knuckles blanched. Kareem glanced at her, his fortress, his fragile light in the gathering darkness, and his voice softened, both protective and pleading. You've carried this burden alone for too long. It's time it was shared. She drew a breath, the silence folding around them, thick and suffocating. The locket, it binds more than our histories. It carries a curse born from betrayal between clans, one that has haunted your bloodline for generations. The words hung heavy between them, the chandeliers above throwing fractured light onto the swirling tension. The twins, hidden for moments behind thick curtains, now emerged hesitantly, their bright eyes wide but guarded, sensing the collision of storms. Zaim's voice broke the fragile stillness. They come, Kareem. The emissaries of the northern clan ride with vengeance in their hearts. They believe. The woman you protect holds the power to end or escalate this ancient war. Kareem's jaw tightened, the hunter's instinct flaring within his emerald gaze. Then we prepare. No enemy will breach these walls while I draw breath. As the words left his lips, the heavy doors creaked open once more. Another figure slipped into the glow of torchlight, silent, swift, and bearing the weight of urgency. The palace seemed to inhale sharply. The newcomer's eyes locked on Kareem's with sharp intensity. "Sheikh," the voice was edged with exhaustion and alarm. "There is worse news. The betrayal Zaim spoke of is closer than you fear. Someone within these walls stokes the flames for the northern clan. Someone we trusted." Kareem's heart thudded, a cold dread settling like ice in his veins. He turned swiftly. Searching the assembled faces, each shadow suddenly suspect. The caretaker stepped forward, eyes resolute, though her lips quivered ever so slightly. "Who?" Kareem demanded, voice rough but focused. The messenger swallowed, sweat gleaming on his brow. "There is a mole, someone feeding them secrets, waiting for the right moment to strike. They aim not just to seize power, but to destroy all you love." The woman's glance flickered darker still. "Betraying battles fought silently within." "There's more," she said, voice low. "A name whispered in fear. The traitor is someone bound to you by blood." Kareem staggered as if struck, the pieces of a hidden puzzle colliding violently in his mind. His eyes locked on Zaim with a flash of hatred and disbelief. The past is not so easily buried. Zaim Tuka. Step forward, his smile folding into something colder, sharper. Burying the past only feeds its hunger. Your enemies are not just outside these walls, Kareem. They dwell within them. The grand hall seemed to pulse with the deadly promise of betrayal as the twins clung quietly to their caretaker, their tiny hands gripping the folds of her robe. Kareem's gaze softened in that moment, the fierce protector melting through the towering sheikh. He knelt, gathering them close, his voice a low vow. "No shadow will touch you. As long as I breathe, this family stands unbroken." The caretaker exhaled softly, the fragile strength of her alliance with Kareem burning bright amid the gathering storm. Outside, the desert wind howled, carrying the distant, relentless beat of horses racing toward the city gates. The walls of the palace, shimmering with gold and crystal, felt suddenly thin, barely a shield against the storms rising both without and within. Kareem's fingers curled tightly around the locket, its delicate chain now a symbol of fragile hope threaded with dark threats. His emerald eyes lifted toward the looming arches, fixating on the single unopened door silhouetted at the end of the hall, the one behind which his deepest fear lurked. From the silence beyond it, a faint whisper escaped, a voice hauntingly familiar, dripping with malice and twisted betrayal. The secret that would undo his empire was no longer hidden. It was returning, and it was coming for them all. The tension that had suffused the grand hall lingered like a heavy fog, yet beneath it now stirred the first fragile threads of resolution. Sheikh Karim's emerald eyes, sharpened by months of hidden wars and quiet battles of the heart, softened as he stood beside the woman who had transformed from a mere caretaker into the keeper of his secrets and his future. The heavy doors had closed behind the shadow of Zaim, banished once more by the strength born of love and unyielding loyalty. The whispered threats and dangerous legacies that had loomed so fiercely now felt tempered by the undeniable power of unity forged in the crucible of their shared trials. Karim stepped forward, the silver locket resting gently in the woman's open palm between them. Their silent truce embodied in its delicate chain. The crest etched upon it, once a symbol of hidden pain and betrayal, now shone softly under the warm glow of the palace lanterns, a reminder that the past might no longer dictate the future. Her eyes met his with quiet determination. "It was never just my burden to carry," she said, voice steady yet laced with vulnerable strength. "Our lives, our legacies, are intertwined. We face what comes together." The twins, no longer timid shadows behind heavy curtains, but radiant beams of laughter and life, toddled between them, their innocent joy a powerful rebuke to the darkness that had threatened to consume the palace. Karim's face broke into a rare, unguarded smile, a moment of pure light that seemed to warm the vast marble hall. Outside, the desert was waking to dawn, the first golden rays stretching across endless dunes, transforming the ruthless landscape into something wondrous and full of promise. The palace, once a fortress of secrets and power, now felt like a sanctuary reborn, ready to embrace peace and a new beginning. Karim lifted the twins into his arms, their small hands clutching his robes with trust and love. His gaze softened as he looked to the woman who had tamed the chaos of his life, whose unwavering spirit had held fast through storms both ancient and new. "We have weathered the fiercest desert storm," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. "But here, within these walls, and within our hearts, we have found something stronger than fear or betrayal." She reached up, her hand brushing away a stray lock of his dark hair, her touch gentle, yet filled with the promise of all they had fought to protect. "Love," she whispered, "is the only legacy worth preserving." In that moment, the palace seemed to breathe, a slow exhale of relief and renewal. Courtiers and servants, sensing the shift, moved through the corridors with lighter steps, their whispers now words of hope and celebration rather than fear. A soft breeze drifted through the open windows, carrying the scent of jasmine and blooming desert roses. A fragrant benediction over a home healed and a family united. The shadows of the past, represented by men like Zaim and clan rivalries, had not vanished entirely, but they had been confronted and diminished by the unbreakable bond forged between Karim and the woman who stood unwavering beside him. He knelt among the twins, their laughter ringing clear and joyous, and looked up into the woman's eyes, a shared world unfolding quietly between them. The once distant and guarded Sheikh was no longer alone. Together, they had shattered the chains of silence and suspicion, embracing a future where secrets no longer held dominion. the emerald eyes that once flashed with fierce authority now shimmered with tenderness and hope. Outside, the horizon blazed with the sunrise, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, a canvas for new stories to be written. Sheikh Karim and his beloved stood united at the heart of their kingdom, a testament to resilience, redemption, and the enduring power of love. The palace no longer echoed with the weight of fear, but resonated with the harmony of a family reborn. And in the depths of that shining morning, beneath the endless desert sky, their story found its glorious end and a bright beginning.